Good afternoon. My name is Kiera Osborne, a senior healthcare administration major and an upperclassman senator on the Student Government Association Senate. On behalf of the Student Government Association, I would like to welcome each of you to Your Lives Matter Students Speak Out. Today's event will focus on continuing a conversation of diversity and inclusion. But tonight, as it relates to race, racism, and prejudice, while highlighting students' experience, concerns, and traumas, as well as providing a medium for us all to share these experiences. The quote of the night is, "The only way to find your voice is to use it." As we proceed with the program, I'd like to ask that everyone please be respectful to what your fellow Patriots will be sharing today, by respecting each other's privacy and making sure that only those that are present have knowledge of the information that will be shared this afternoon. Once again, I'd like to welcome everyone to this afternoon's event. Please remember that your lives matter, and it is your time to speak out. Thank you. We will now have the opening prayer by the SGA Vice President Delonte Huff.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. Lord, we thank you for allowing us to gather together in this place to be able to express ourselves. Dear Lord, we ask that throughout this program, something is said or something is done that will cause us to learn from each other and that will cause us to make a change. Dear Lord, we pray for unity on this campus and this community, this state, this nation, the world. It is in your name we pray, amen.
Good afternoon. My name is Malachi Dawson, and I'm a junior mathematics major, and I also serve as a Patriot community as the senator of the Student Government Association Senate and as the vice president of the FMU chapter of the NAACP. The story of Excess explores the history of people of color in public spaces and the biases and prejudices that follow. To quote one of the participants from the film, as he recounts his daily life, he says, "I feel like I'm disturbing people by just being there, like people feel uncomfortable when I walk in." This is a reality that most people of color can relate to, an unfortunate reality. This young black man shared his experience last year as a part of a short film, The Story of Access, which was seen by more than 175,000 Starbucks partners across the United States on May 29th during the company's anti-bias training. Starbucks asked renowned filmmaker Stanley Nelson to create the film after the arrest of two young African-American entrepreneurs, Dante Robinson and Rashawn Nelson, who had been waiting at Philadelphia Starbucks for a business meeting to begin. The Story of Access is just what its name says, a story. A story that is so much more than just a story for a lot of us sitting here today. As the film plays, I'd like to ask you to think about your own stories and your own experiences, relating them to the ones shared in the film. At some point during the film, the narrator will ask, what kind of country do we live in, and who do we want to be? Both amazing questions that America has been trying to answer for generations. I would like to ask you to keep these questions in your mind for the duration of the film. Ladies and gentlemen, A Story of Excess.
Dear Starbucks partners, I'm Stanley Nelson, a documentary filmmaker. My films are about race, America, and the decades-long struggle for all people to be treated as equals in public spaces. Our town squares, our stores, our fields, our parks, our pools, our restaurants. I made this film to help us understand this important struggle in our country so we can go forward together.
When I go into stores, sometimes I get followed, which is really annoying. And it just gives me, it just makes me uncomfortable. And sometimes I get anxiety, so I have to leave. Especially being a teen of color, they assume that you're doing something bad.
I feel like I'm disturbing people by just being there. Like, people feel uncomfortable when I walk in I guess I've kind of become numb to it after so many years. Like, this is just my life, and it's just something that I've gotten used to, unfortunately.
I think all of us make that choice at some point of, am I going to take the burden of this interaction being comfortable, or am I going to say, you take the burden of this interaction being comfortable? Because what I really want is a sandwich. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to fight. I'm hungry, right? I don't want to get into this with you, and I'm really not here to teach you this. But other times, it's like, okay, wait a minute. Lesson time.
Discrimination against African Americans in public spaces has a long history. In the 1960s, black and white students trying to desegregate buses were firebombed. Black patrons were routinely denied service in restaurants and hotels.
I'm sorry, our management does not allow us to serve here.
And civil rights workers were dragged from lunch counters, spat upon, and beaten.
We're willing to be beaten for democracy, and you misuse democracy.
The right to be respected in public spaces was at the heart of the civil rights movement.
They keep thinking we begging them for something. We ain't begging for nothing. We telling them what is ours right now.
The freedom movement of the 1950s and 60s insisted that the United States live up to its Constitution and allow equal access for all. Finally, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, outlawing discrimination in public spaces. But changing the law doesn't always change reality. And being allowed in doesn't always mean being welcomed.
To be welcomed as a customer means that not only do I allow you in, but it means that I'm glad you're here. I want to serve you. I want your business. And I don't draw distinctions between you and other customers in terms of your value. But it's time we talk about what it means to not be welcomed as an American citizen.
It's not like I can mute my actual physical blackness, right? So I just assume that people see a particular thing when they see the color of my skin. So everything else has to be like perfect and clean and as blended in as possible. It's really just an arsenal of different masks, you know? And it happens every time I leave my house.
When I leave my house, regardless of where I'm going, I'm just leaving my house. Just walking out the door. I'm not walking out the door thinking, what kind of hurdle am I going to run into today? What kind of way am I going to be judged? I walk out a free man. I just do my thing.
I have to make sure that I have given enough space between myself and another patron or another commuter on the train, and just ensure that I'm not making someone uncomfortable. I have to make sure that my hands are visible when I walk into certain places so they make sure I'm not stealing. I try to make sure I make eye contact with people who may or may not be security or managerial staff, just to ensure that, you know, I'm not here to hide anything. I watch my tone to make sure that I don't come off as threatening. Just leaving the house some days, you know, sometimes it just keep you at home and just keep you away from everything.
For more than 50 years, equal treatment has been the law. Yet, as we know from cell phone videos, the nightly news, and maybe our own experience, we still have a long way to go.
Why are you following?
Watch this.
You think I'm stealing?
You've been following me around the store the whole time. There she goes, she think I'm stealing.
Your card is fake. You're going to jail. That's what I kept hearing.
Unless you're spending money, we don't need.
Oh, I'm not spending money? Because I'm black? You've been
Your manager does not like black people, honey. Yeah. Oh my God! No, this is wrong. Oh my God! Yeah.
We just need to recognize that Black people are navigating the public space differently than white people. that women are navigating the public space differently than men, and not use the shortcut that has been wired into your brain because of the society that we live in, that tells you when you see me, you should be nervous or you should be worried.
It brought me such despair to the day I recognized I had to explain this to my son, that he was gonna, that this muddy river of racism, he was still gonna have to walk through it. We hadn't dammed it, we hadn't dried it up. It was still there for him to go through. And I've got to somehow try to tell him, okay, off you go.
The society I want to see is I want to be able to walk out the house just as free feeling as that white guy who said he doesn't worry about a thing when he walks out the door. I want to have that same expectation.
Today, discrimination is against the law. It's the people and the systems that support our communities that must follow suit. No one's going to do it for us. What can you do to make our schools, our parks, our stores, our restaurants as welcoming and as inclusive as they can be? What kind of country do we want to live in? Who do we want to be?
Good afternoon. My name is Paula Patron Garcia, and I am a pre-nursing major here at FMU and a freshman SGA senator. Dr. Daphne Carter McCants currently serves as the Assistant Vice President for Student Life at Francis Marion University. Her educational background consists of a Bachelor of Science degree in Graphic Communications from Clemson University, a Master's of Education degree in Higher Education Administration from North Carolina State University, and a PhD in Leadership for Higher Education from Capella University. In Dr. McCants' professional career, she has spent the last 15 years working in higher education. At Francis Marion University, she is responsible for many areas within the Office of Student Life, including managing departmental budgets, student engagement, diversity and inclusion, supervision, and providing departmental leadership. In addition to these responsibilities, Dr. McCants coordinates cultural programming efforts, aid in administrating retention-focused programs for first-year students, serve on numerous campus-wide advisory boards, and advises several student organizations, including Francis Marion's Student Government Association, campus activity board, and all incoming international students. Dr. McCants' hobbies include playing piano, traveling, and student advising. When she's not working, she enjoys hosting educational seminars, serving in the role of adjunct faculty across multiple learning platforms, and spending time with family. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Daphne Carter McCants.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Good evening, and welcome to this extraordinary event sponsored by the Office of Student Life and FMU Student Government Association. Tonight's distinguished panel consists of familiar faces from the FMU campus community. Their insight and personal experiences will help shape the conversation as we engage in open dialogue about race, culture, diversity, racism, and discrimination. While we are aware that this is a sensitive topic for many, please remember that all comments provided tonight should be used as a tool to help us better communicate with each other during this time of overwhelming uncertainty. As the panel answers the first series of questions, we invite you to make use of the index cards that were provided to you as you walked in. You may use this card to write a question for any member of the panel. Questions will be screened for duplications, and we will attempt to answer your question as time permits. After the question and answer session has ended, we will open the floor for comments from the audience. Let's take a moment to learn more about our distinguished panel members. Ms. Linda Sullen, if you would wave your hand for everyone. Linda M. Sullen was born in Florence, South Carolina. She was educated in the public schools of Florence, graduated from West Florence High School. She attended Francis Marion University and in 2009 received a Bachelor's of Science degree in psychology. Ms. Sullen is a member of the New Ebenezer Baptist Church in Florence, South Carolina. She serves as president of the Prison Fellowship Ministry and former coordinator for the Florence County Angel Tree Program. She is also a member of the evangelism ministry that feeds the homeless. Ms. Sullen is currently employed by Francis Marion University as an accountant, payroll financial analyst. She has been employed by the university for 43 years. She is currently the president of the Francis Marion University African American Faculty and Staff Coalition and is a founding member. Her awards to include the 2017 Outstanding Staff Member Service Award and the 2020 Marvin W. Lynch Humanitarian Award. Mr. Sullen is married to Dennis Sullen, and they have 3 children, Quadric, Denise, and Dennis. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Linda Sullen. Dr. Louis Venters. If you would wave your hand, please, sir. Louis Venters is an associate professor of history at Francis Marion University and a consultant in the fields of historic preservation and cultural resource management. His work inside and outside the academy focuses on race, religion, and social change in the United States, issues of equity and sustainability in rural environments, stewardship, and the empowerment of young people in historically disadvantaged communities. Dr. Venters teaches courses in African and African American history, U.S. history, and African American studies. He is the author of 2 books, No Jim Crow Church, The Origins of South Carolina's Baha'i Community, and A History of the Baha'i Faith in South Carolina, and is the author or co-author of a number of public history reports and exhibits, including the multiple award-winning Mobile Travel Guide to African American Historic Sites, the Green Book of South Carolina. He represents the university on the South Carolina African American Heritage Commission and is a member of the Board of Directors of Preservation South Carolina. He blogs on issues related to race, religion, history, and culture at louisventers.com. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Louis Venters. Ms. Kyra Wilson. Kyra Wilson is a senior secondary English education major from Columbia, South Carolina. She serves as the president of the Francis Marion University chapter of NAACP, executive chair of the Francis Marion University Campus Activities Board, and member of the FMU chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. Freshman Focus mentor and the 2020 Francis Marion University Homecoming Queen. She believes that in order to make a positive and lasting impact on your community, you must do the work, as faith without works is dead. Wilson, who is a worker bee, hopes to inspire future generations by becoming a high school English teacher and school administrator. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Kyra Wilson. Mr. Michael Youssef. Michael Youssef is the campaign manager for Shaquez McCall for Florence City Council. Michael graduated from Francis Marion University with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and later obtained his Master's in Business Administration from Florida International University. Michael takes pleasure in community service and serves in several community service-based organizations. Michael has been active with the South Carolina Democratic Party since 2013, where he began to get involved as a fellow, doing door-to-door voter registrations and participating in phone banks, and later went on to serve as the PD Region's chair for the Young Democrats of South Carolina. Michael is passionate about social justice and making a difference in our state. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Michael Youssef. Whew. Now that we have formally introduced everyone, let's dive into a few questions. Panel, in no particular order, please provide your insight for the following questions. Based on the information, historical relevance, and overarching theme provided in the short film that was presented earlier, how does this depiction of our current society make you feel as an individual? In no particular order.
Honestly, watching the video made me feel very troubled, just to see how far we have left to go. When it flashed back to the civil rights movement, many of our grandparents, great-grandparents were out there on the front lines, making sure that their descendants had the opportunity to be equal, and I still feel like we have a long way to go.
I would like to add on that. When I was watching the video, it definitely hurt. It made me angry, but it served as a good reminder, as the video said, that although the laws have changed, this is a reality that we're in. So it's a good reality check, and it should remind us that the work is not done. We still have a long way to go, as Ms. Wilson said, and we got to continue to speak out. We must continue to take action, and we have the opportunity to do so in a few weeks to vote for whoever you want to vote for. But at the end of the day, this is the reality that we live in, and we got to continue to speak out and take action.
I felt numb originally, and I thought about the struggle that I have lived for such a long time. And then I asked the question, the sacrifices that were made, the lives that were lost, what did it mean? The flesh part of me wanted to say we were fighting a losing battle. But who I am and who I believe in ensures me that there is hope. I've seen change, I've seen some positive change, and for that I'm thankful. I never thought the day would come that Francis Marion University would have a Black registrar. So change is developing right in front of me. So these negative feelings that want to surface, don't accept them. There is hope. Don't give up. Continue to struggle.
I felt a number of things seeing that short film. I guess one that I would share is fear and sadness. I have two young sons. I usually don't talk about my children at work a lot because, well, for reasons. But they're both African-American boys, adopted. And, I think all the time about, that last question that they pose in the film is, what kind of country do you want to live in? And I know what kind of country I want for my children and for all children. And, I see, as Ms. Sullen mentioned, so much is different from when that older footage from the civil rights movement comes from. So much is different. I mean, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 really did change a lot. And obviously not nearly enough. So that I have a lot of anxiety about my children's immediate future. I have, I think, still a lot of faith in the country and the world sort of down the road. But that doesn't mean the next few years are not still going to be really, really ugly. And so what kind of place are we what kind of place am I building for my little boys?
Thank you for those touching remarks, panel. And we will go into the next question. This is a question for everyone again. Describe a time when you or someone you know has felt isolated because of their ethnicity or a stereotype associated with race, in no particular order.
I attended my first conference. I was real nervous. There was maybe 8 people at the table. I was the only African American, trying to fit in, trying to say something when I could say something. A coworker of mine said, Linda, you know, when we would go on field trips, and after the trip, we could order anything we wanted to eat off the menu. She said, you could have steak, you could have anything. She said, but why do black people always eat chicken? And she thought it was funny. And I felt so hurt and so humiliated. But wanting to be accepted, I hid my feelings and smiled and said, I don't know.
I remember a time, I was a senior in high school. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina, and I've always been so proud to be an African American female. I remember buying these earrings that were shaped in the shape of Africa, and I remember walking around school having my earrings on, just so proud and just so happy. And I remember a classmate of mine came up to me and he was like, why do you have on those earrings? And I was like, because I'm African American, I'm celebrating being an African American. He said, well, if you like Africa so much, why don't you go back? And I felt slighted, but I didn't want to come off as the loud or outrageous African American female. So I said, well, I'm African American, and that's why I have on these earrings. I kept it just like that, didn't want to go into any further conversation with him, but that conversation left a lasting impact on how I feel in situations like that.
So my story, just to give you a little bit of background. So I moved in 2003 from Dominican Republic with my family. I didn't speak any English at all. And I remember when I started 5th grade here in Florence, I was just getting bullied every single day. Just because I couldn't speak English, people would call me Mexican, they would laugh at me. And I was that kid in recess, everybody would be playing and I would just be sitting by myself just because I couldn't speak English. And every day I would get called Mexican and bullied. And one time I just got fed up that I actually got in a fight with a kid, and then we went to the principal office, and that even sucked because I couldn't communicate and tell them what was going on. So I remember I would just cry at night, and I didn't want to go to school. I remember a couple days I would even fake that I was sick just to stay home. But, you know, those were tough times when I first moved to the United States.
She said in no particular order, but we went in the same order. So since I already mentioned my boys, I'll tell 2 stories on them. And the point is how young these boys were. My older son was taking swim lessons at the Y, and he was maybe 4, I guess. And this little white girl next to him, they were holding onto the wall. She just looked at him and said, "You're black." And he kind of looked back at her, like, "Don't you know your colors?" He said, "I'm brown." And, you know, didn't talk to her anymore because, you know, she can't see. You know, that's a kind of a chuckle moment, but also, like, that was a little girl who, for some reason, thought it was necessary to say that out loud to this other kid in the pool. Makes you wonder what sort of other things she had been exposed to in her young life. The other one could have been a little more serious. My youngest son was, I think, 3 or 4, walking with his grandfather, my father-in-law, who's also white presenting, and they're walking down the road, and there's this, and my father-in-law is a big, tall guy, and there's this little munchkin baby walking next to him, and the police stopped to inquire what is the relationship between these two, right? And my father-in-law said, "This is my grandson," and the cop kind of, took him a second to put everything together, and it was the first time I know that my younger son had heard black and white used to refer to people as opposites of each other, right? He knew his colors by then too, but we just didn't go around in our house talking about black and white, right? That's, all of these things we know as parents are gonna come, right? But in our home, that's not the first thing on the lips, right? But after that, my kid, little tiny boy, knows the difference between black and white and that they're not the same. And of course, thinking about, that's his first interaction with the police, and nothing came of it. Statistically speaking, it won't be his last interaction with the police, and all my sons are doing is getting taller and taller.
Thank you for that, panel. I know these experiences may not be easy to talk about, so I appreciate you taking the time to tell us about those experiences. This question is a toss-up question, so it could be a combination of two people or anyone who would like to answer this question. Is racism seen differently through the lens of a younger generation versus an older generation? If so, please explain.
Can I start with that one? So I'm a history professor, right? So that's a dangerous question to throw at me. I think I was probably, even though my training and everything I teach is about, the history of racism in the United States, I think I have still been too naive in saying, the next generation that's coming up, all these old racists are going to die, and the young people are going to do just fine. I was feeling good. I guess it was really maybe some of those pictures from Charlottesville a few years ago, where a lot of those Nazis were young, college students. And then it was 2 years before that was when Dylan Roof, this young, he was 19 or 20, walked into, to Bible study in this church in Charleston, and then tried to kill everybody there. So I'm not positive that the younger generation is out of the woods. I think there's a lot of pressure, a lot of toxic ideas that are being thrust on the younger generation, that are really dangerous and very combustible. So I have mixed feelings about that question, and I guess what I've been most heartened by is this year, in response to the killing of George Floyd, how a whole other set of young people have moved really into the forefront of social consciousness and really figuring out how to take the reins into their own hands in very energetic and very thoughtful ways. I think just so much of what I've seen from young people this year has just felt awful grown to me, just mature, level-headed, and really sort of in it for the long haul, which I think is the only way to approach it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm sort of a toss-up.
Anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, I would like to add on to that. I think we definitely are seeing a new generation rising up. I mean, just to give you some info on the Florence election this past primary, Florence had the highest voter turnout for young people that we have ever seen. And I mean, if we look at the march after George Floyd, I don't think Florence have seen so many young people come out to downtown and march together to speak out. I mean, the whole United States saw marches everywhere. And I mean, I wouldn't say that we're seeing it differently through different lenses. I just think is a new generation that are starting to realize what the older generation went through as far as racism. And I think the new generation is acting, and I just hope that it continues that way, because that's what it's going to take for us to start seeing change in our communities.
Thank you.
I have confidence. If you analyze the response from myself and the young lady, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Kyra Wilson.
Karma?
Kyra.
Kyra.
Yes, ma'am.
I was to the left, she was to the right, totally different. Where I was speechless and wanted to belong, she had no doubt as to who she was and expressed herself intelligently. This is the generation that I see before me. This is the generation that is gonna fight for my rights. So I have all faith that we're gonna see a change.
Piggybacking on what everyone else said, I do have hope that we will see a change. Just seeing the fight that our ancestors had to try to make things equal for us, and we're still struggling to have those same equal rights, it makes me think about George Floyd, it makes me think about Breonna Taylor, and how many, like there's been so many people who have tried to say, oh, well, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, he did this, that, and the third. That doesn't mean she should have been killed. So it makes me think that we still have a long way to go. I feel like the older generation has fought, and it's time for us as the young people to pick up the torch and, you know, do what we have to do.
Thank you, panel. Our next question, another toss-up. In your opinion, are racist and discriminatory acts targeted at the same rate for men and women? If not, how are these occurrences different?
I would like to take that question first. I think it does, but in different contexts. So, for instance, African-American males, we see a higher number of death through police brutality, for example. But then if we look at African-American females, I mean, we have yet to have the first African-American president woman, the first woman African-American vice president, yet we don't even have a woman African-American in the Supreme Court. So I think we still have ways to go, but I think, you know, women and men do face the same, you know, discriminatory acts, but in some ways in different contexts, if that makes sense.
Anybody else?
I definitely agree with Mr. Michael. I feel like there is obviously a target on African-American males and African-American females. What I've realized is that African-American females will go so hard and we'll be like, okay, well, justice for this man, justice for that man, and a lot of the energy isn't really reciprocated towards us. A lot of people were going hard for George Floyd, rightfully so, but I haven't seen that same energy for Breonna Taylor.
Okay, thank you, panel, for those comments. Our next question. Is racism and discrimination avoidable? If so, what are some strategies to help combat race, hate in America?
Well, I don't think it's avoidable. I think if we say that, that would be, you know, in a sense, too strong, just because you won't be able to change everyone. But I think we can definitely minimize it. And the way we do that is, you have to, first have these kind of conversations, because I feel like there's, some individuals that I even have in contact with, they don't understand the struggle. And I think you have to understand someone to be able to feel what they're going through. And for instance, we're being open with the whole Black Lives Matter movement. You have seen some people being against it. They feel that all lives matter. Well, not necessarily. And I saw a story on Facebook that talks about Black Lives Matter in a sense, a house burning in the neighborhood. If my neighbor's house is burning and they're trying to put it out, why would I be mad that my house is not getting the attention that it should get? Instead, I'll actually be there to help my neighbor. Hey, we see people set up GoFundMe accounts and things like that. See, that's the type of, sympathy that we need to have for everyone. But in a sense, I think these type of conversations need to continue, and we need to continue to speak out. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's avoidable. But yes, I think we can definitely minimize it.
I think we can minimize it as well. I feel like we should have more diversity inclusion trainings to make sure that everybody understands each other's backgrounds, where they're from, without passing judgment, without truly knowing who your neighbor really is. So if we start doing things like diversity inclusion training, making sure that everybody knows about everybody else's circumstances, I feel like it will not be avoidable, but it will help tremendously.
I wondered, that it seems like the way that question is worded makes it a little tricky, right? In the short term, like right at this moment, is race hatred and discrimination avoidable? I mean, apparently not. Right at this moment, it is not avoidable if we pay attention to what's around us. What has to be done in order to eradicate white supremacy from all of the systems in our country, all the institutions in our country, and from all of the individuals that compose all the systems and the groups in the country? I think that's a huge question that could be its own panel. That's a lot of discussion. But I think those two pieces are important and critical to understand. And I think that vocabulary is important. That sometimes I hear in our discourse about race, I hear folk focused on systemic racism. This is the way racism, this is the way white supremacy manifests itself in education system. This is the way it manifests itself in the political system. Let's educate people to see this is the way white supremacy has manifested itself in government policy about housing and how we create neighborhoods and so forth over all these generations, right? So there's systemic racism. And then there's a kind of sometimes another conversation that's taking place that's about microaggressions. It's about even the way the film it seems to focus on, like it's talking about public spaces, right? But which are governed by institutions and systems, but also what they were the incident that led to Starbucks taking that initiative was a very interpersonal kind of relationship, right? So there's the level of the individual. And can you educate individuals? And can individuals heal? Can individuals see each other as people? And I would like for there to be more in our discourse and in our thinking and in our action, just seeing that those are not two mutually exclusive propositions, right? The individual, at the individual level, like what can I do? That is critical, right? And what can I do when I meet this person? And what are the small things or the big things that I can, just in my day-to-day activities? That's hugely important, right? Who are my friends? Who do I go to church with? Who in my intimate circles, who are the people that I let into my heart, right? Those are very essential questions. And then also the way systems operate and affect individuals is hugely important for us to understand and address, right? And individuals compose systems and can also have an effect on changing systems. So those are mutually reinforcing propositions, the individual and society. I hope it's not a cop-out to say that expression, everything is everything, right? We're talking about everything has to change in our society. Everything has to change inside of us as individuals. We're not doing one piece without having to address all of the others all at the same time forever, right? Until it's all done. So I think it's a tall order, right? But I think it's the only thing to do, right? I think one virtue of the present crisis, one silver lining, and it's a thin silver lining, you got to hunt for it, right? Is that more and more people are starting to figure out that, oh my gosh, this is an existential question for our country, right? Either we root out every bit of white supremacy from every institution and from every heart, or the whole thing is going to burn down. And also there's a global dimension to this, right? Our racial crisis and the inequities in our economy and the global environmental crisis, right? And the networks of corruption that connect our government and big businesses to corrupt people in places all over the world, right? It's not just our country that has to deal with this. It's the questions we are asking are about the survival of the human race. So there's nothing else to be talking about. If we're talking about anything other than this, we're wasting breath. Sorry, that wasn't meant to be so long. Don't get a professor up here and let him go.
It's just,
I'm sorry.
It's quite all right. So, are we done with that question? Ms. Linda, did you have anything to add? You good? Okay, so we have one more question, and Dr. Venters, you kind of alluded to that, but let me go ahead and ask that all panelists, if you would answer this one last question that we have prearranged. The question is, in your opinion, what are some ways to pursue authentic, cross-cultural, and cross-ethnic relationships on the campus of FMU? We'd like for everyone to answer that question.
I think when I attended Francis Marion, one of the things that I noticed, and I think I see it still happening, is we need to have more events like these, but also more programs that teach us about different cultures. For instance, programs within Hispanic Heritage Month, Black History Month, LGBT, and things like that. Because, for instance, right, when I first came to the United States, not a lot of people knew where Dominican Republic was. We have a high population of Mexicans in Florence within the Hispanic group, and that's what most people knew. And I mean, you hear on the news, Mexico, United States, that sort of thing, but it goes beyond that. There's more countries, there's more cultural diversity, even within the Hispanic community. But I think a better understanding of cultural race, will give us a better understanding of each other, but also having more conversations, mingles. I know it's tough right now with COVID and things like that, but, programs like these where everyone can kind of share their story and speak out and share their experience is important.
I definitely agree. I feel like events like that would make people more susceptible to making friends outside of their norm. I've always been the person who loves to meet people no matter what they look like. So I feel as though if we have those conversations and we have events that bring people together of different ethnicities, nationalities, backgrounds, I feel like that'll better help the FMU campus community. Just events where people can come out and be together and understand your brother or your sister as your own and just get to meet people. I feel like those events will be great to have to help better the relationship with FMU and different races on this campus.
I was having this conversation with one of my classes, actually, a couple weeks ago, and we were supposed to be talking about something else, so we didn't have the whole conversation. But one of the things that we talked about in that discussion is really how unique Francis Marion's student body is, in that, this is not a historically black institution. It's not exactly a historically white institution either, right? It's founded in 1970, so it doesn't have a lot of the baggage that other institutions founded, before the civil rights movement have. And at this point, and for many years, the student body has been, pretty much evenly split between African American and Euro American. It just kind of goes up and down a little bit, but I think these days we're like, 48%, and then, some great little folks that are neither one nor the other. Thank God for them. There are not many colleges in the United States that are quite like that, where nobody owns the space, right? This is neither a white space that black people are coming into, nor is it a black space that white people are coming into. It's it's a unique, to me this is a unique opportunity. But I don't think I think taking it to the next level, whatever that is, and I don't know what it is, but taking it to the next level I see a lot of friendships as an observer, right? As a faculty member, I see a lot of interracial mingling, right? This is a friendly campus. But whatever the next thing is, it's not going to happen just because we're in proximity to each other, just because we're all here, right? What do we do with intention? I don't know if it's, I'm not saying don't have more programs, after hours, right? But like, what are they? What exactly, what, it seems like our efforts are kind of scattered, right? We've had programs like this since I've been here, which is more than a decade now. Not quite as long as Ms. Linda. And I think, is that Don Jackson out there? Yeah, see, some people know a lot more than I do, but like, this is not the first time that we've had let's get students together and speak out, right? What's the system, right? What's the plan long term, not just this program here, that program here. Anyway, I don't have an answer, but I'm thinking about that approach.
I don't have an answer, because the programs that we mentioned about having, the university has had them. We are a respectful campus. I think we respect each other. We are, the Florence area, we are different people. I don't know how we can get the students to support each other. Just at the event that was held just this week or last week, the SGA had, you had several groups that participated and that came from different areas. So you had a group of diversity going on. But when each group finished their assignment, it just broke my heart that you didn't care to listen at what the next person had to say. You know, I know you could have been going to class, or you may have had to go to work, but I just see that so often. When we have a program, you do what you're supposed to do for the program, and then you leave. I just don't know what it's gonna take to make us, we're good in our own little area, but I don't know how we can connect the areas. And it's been a struggle. I mean, I've heard conversation about it ever since I've been here. I think Student Affairs has done a fantastic job of trying to recognize different nationalities, and we just won't come out. This is a great program that's going on now, and you would have thought that we would have had a bigger turnout, but I don't know what the answer is.
Well, thank you for your comments, panel. I have a couple of questions from our audience, and I'm trying to combine them so that it's not too many of the same type of question. But anybody can answer this question, and I'd say one or two people. Where do you think, this question comes, it says, where do you think racism starts and where does it stem from?
How much time do we have?
2 minutes.
So I'll just, for my part, I'll just give my quick version, right? The anatomically modern human beings have been around on the planet for like 200,000 years, right? Folk that look like us with our physical form, 200,000 years. Racism, white supremacy, has existed for 500 years. Just the last 500 years. Racism came into being, the idea of thinking of human beings as discrete groups, like with boundaries between them, it's a brand new idea in human history. And you know, we teach classes about, you know, what exactly the circumstances were and so forth. But my point is, you know, an idea that comes into being can also be thrown in the trash can, right? If something has a beginning, then that presupposes that if we choose to, we can also end it, right? Because we swim in this water like a fish, it's hard for us to even imagine a universe where race is not one of the fundamental categories, one of the fundamental ways that you experience the world, right? But people did it for a whole long time before 500 years ago. And we better figure out how to make sure they can do it. We and our youngins can do it again.
I think racism stems from not knowing. If you think about it, when you see white supremacists on TV, I've been watching this documentary on YouTube called Soft White Underbelly, and the interviewer, he interviews everybody. And on his recent episode, he interviewed a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, and the man was basically saying, he was asking him the same question. He was like, where do you think racism stems from? He was just like, I don't know. I was just, born to hate these people because of the way they look. So I feel like racism stems from not knowing.
And just to add, I think to what Ms. Wilson said, I think it also can stem from generation. Like I had a conversation with a guy that I used to go to school with, and he, used to tell me, hey, my parents, used to tell me, hey, who are you hanging out with? Why are you hanging out with that person? At the end of the day, they didn't want to say it directly, but it was because the guy he was hanging out with was African American. So, and luckily he didn't take that on. He didn't care what his parents felt. But you do have some people that take that from their parents. I mean, I've seen, you see videos of, I think there was it a fraternity or sorority? They were on the bus going from a wedding or something, and then they started saying the N-word, sort of thing, right? But it can definitely be passed on from, generation to generation through, parents or family, friends, or, but yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And I have one last question, and Dr. Venters, this is for you. If you could could explain this. Can you define white privilege, and what does that mean for others?
Oh, I can take a stab at it. I mean, that's a big topic, too. White privilege, as I understand the way the term is being used, is about the design of the world. To what extent do doors open or close based on the way one is categorized racially? And there's by every measure, any kind of measure of human well-being, life, statistically speaking, is easier for white people in the United States than it is for people who are not white. Any way you measure healthcare, any way you measure education, any way you measure wealth, acquisition of wealth, passing wealth on from generation to generation, any way you measure political access, by any way you measure it, life is easier if you show up in the world with a white exterior, right? That is not to say that if you are in the white racial caste, your life is going to be easy or free of trouble, right? But what it means is that the way you look is not going to be one of the things that you have to worry about, right? Your race is not going to be one of the things that makes your life hard, right? There may be other things, right? But race is not it. I mean, it said the question was for me, but if anybody else wants to share,
Does anybody else want to chime in? Well, thank you, Dr. Ventures. I appreciate that explanation. I appreciate that.
But Daphne, I'm sorry, but the last part of the question is, and what does that mean for us?
What does it mean for others?
For
others who are not white.
Okay. So did I answer all the question you
think? You did a really good job. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our panel one more round of applause. Panelists, I am appreciative of your willingness to answer some of these very difficult but necessary questions, the kinds of questions that inspire us to partake in good trouble, as described by the late Congressman John Lewis. At this time, we would like to open the floor to our audience for brief comments or remarks pertaining to the topic tonight. Please keep your comments free of any derogatory statements about our panelists or the FMU campus community. I'd like to also remind you to keep your mask on during your time on stage and limit your comments to no more than 2 minutes in length. Think of this as an opportunity to share a personal experience or offer advice to others in attendance who may be dealing with an issue associated with tonight's discussion topic. Our SGA senators will be standing by to direct you to the microphone on the stage. If you wish, you can provide your name or you can remain anonymous. Senators, you can, if there's anyone who'd like to participate, you can walk to the microphone. Okay. If you get closer, you can speak into the mic. Okay. Okay.
All right, so hey, my name is Kiana Jordan. I'm the SGA secretary, and one of the things you guys were talking about earlier, you were saying like, you know, how to make it more inclusive on campus between, you know, all the students. And I felt maybe getting the professors like more involved. You know, like one thing I think coming back to school, like the whole Black Lives Matter movement actually wasn't really acknowledged, you know, not from professors. You know, we had our president, and even Dr. Carter, you know, he said things, but as far as like our professors that we kind of deal with every day, it wasn't really no one really acknowledged anything. So it just kind of, it sweeps it under the rug. So that was one. I had another point. Let me look it up really quick. And then a question that, one of the questions that I had, I always think about this is, I guess I never thought, like, you can't really expel racism, you know, because it's been around, it's always going to be around. Even as far back as like Mesopotamia, you know, there's racism. So it's like,
No, there's not. No, there's not. White supremacy is new. People have always, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No,
but
you're
I just
fine.
like, it's really important. It's really important. It's not always going to be around, and it has not always been around. Every group has always been xenophobic, right? Like, oh, we're the best, and those people are a little bit strange, right?
Right.
White supremacy is something specific, right? Racism, the idea of conceiving of the human species as divided into these compartments, right? That's a new idea. It is a very, very recent idea in human history. Yes, there's been prejudice, there's been, you know, people enslaving each other, there's been all kind of crazy for a long time. But it just wasn't race until about 500 years ago. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
no,
I'm so
you're
sorry.
fine. That's great. I mean, it's one thing, you know, like, you know, I guess I had to research that, but I was just thinking, you know, like, how do you get that to go away? If it's been around for so long, and honestly, you may have to correct me again, but, you know, America was almost built on that. So, you know.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
So,
We
yeah.
are within that 500-year period, right?
Right. So, like, how
Yes.
do you can't tear down America. So what do you do? I had another point, but, you know, since there's more people standing up, I'm going to let them talk. So that's just what I had to say.
Kiana, come this way. There you go. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kara Rice, and I just wanted to quickly discuss about how I feel about the origin of race. I mean, you know, like of discrimination and prejudice. And I personally feel that it probably comes from, you know, differences. You know, we all have different things about ourselves, and I feel like maybe something in the past, or maybe, you know, success. You know, people get jealous over certain aspects of people and cultures and stuff like that, and maybe that's where this all began, a big disagreement and jealousy over, you know, differences, pretty much. Some differences can make you more superior, and I feel like maybe that might be an origin of racism and maybe a big reason why we have so many problems in our society. And I feel like the only way to really solve it, personally, is to just keep on trying your best. Like, keep on advertising, keep getting yourself out there, and making sure people understand the problems in society and how we can fix it. And to really just break down and rewire why everything is, why it's harder for Black people to really be successful in this world and get power and get businesses and just make the world a better place. I feel like we would have to just almost like start over again unless, you know, things just became equal and fair. But that's all I really had to say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Tristan Sherd. I'm a junior major in elementary education. And I would like to tell a story of what I've been through with racism. When I was in high school, I had been treated like I am ugly or because of the color of my skin and how they treated me because of my disability. I remember when I was in cross country, I thought the people that I was with were my friends, but one time there was this specific guy came up to me and we were having a little conversation, then he ended up calling me a racist remark, the N-word. And I looked at him and was like, excuse me, like, what did you say to me? And he said, no, I apologize. And then he tried to seduce me and try to do many things to forget everything what he just said. And I feel that if I would have hit him or would fight him, I would have got in trouble. I would have been got kicked out of all the clubs and organizations that I have been in. So my question in my mind is, should I handle it differently, or should I just hit him to make him realize that he shouldn't have done that to me? Because I felt betrayed, I felt hurt. So I now know that everything I've been through was to make me stronger, and now all the opportunities I have here, I just feel blessed and feel glad that I handle it the way I handle it. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Erin. I'm a second-year psychology major here. To be honest, I had a lot of comments and questions, and I was just going at it, but I'm going to, limit it to one. The one thing I wanted to talk about was the difference between cultural appropriation and appreciation, because within the past year, I've seen it blown up a lot, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement. And personally, I'm a person who really enjoys different cultures, respectfully. I enjoy learning about them. I enjoy experiencing them. And it's mostly on social media, but you see people getting, they get thrown shade or hate for appreciating other cultures, or they're told they're cultural appropriating, when in fact it's not the same. They're not the same thing. Cultural appropriation is when you're taking another culture's, you have blackface, that's the type of cultural appropriation. You have when people wear certain things that are really significant to another culture, that's cultural appropriation, when things have meaning and very significant meaning, but then someone goes and does one thing that's not necessarily cultural appropriation, but then they're told, oh, they're acting this race, so they're trying to act this way. And it can be a little off-putting at times, because we always talk about being diverse, but then it's like when people try and branch out, we're told to just stay in your race, stay with what you know. And within the recent generation, and as we move forward, I think you definitely need to be educated about what's right and wrong to appreciate the culture, because especially when it comes to religions and certain things, you just can't do that unless that is your practice. But when you're trying to become educated, because that's basically what it is, when you're appreciating, you're educating yourself, but you shouldn't be told that you're wrong or that you're, bad for doing so, because then that's that kind of stuff that makes people not want to branch out and experience things. And that's just all I have to say.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Malachi Dawson, again, a math major. I have 2 points I do want to point out, and I'm hoping I'm not speaking out of turn for anyone, but I believe there was a question about who deals with racism and prejudice more, black men or white women, black women. I believe women deal with prejudice and racism more, but just in places that we do not look deeply in. I have a mom, 2 sisters, and a niece that are, of course, that are black, and women and specifically black women are shunned down in the workplace. My mom works for the federal government. She's been with the VA hospital for 15 years, and she has told me about stories of how younger white women have came into the jobs and felt threatened by her presence of being an African-American woman. And it saddens me to know that this is still the case. And again, in places we don't look at. We just look at the outside. We don't look in the internal. We don't look at the workplace. Again, like Mr. Yusuf said, we don't see a vice president. We haven't saw a black vice president, woman, or nothing like that. So it's definitely in places we have not looked in. And I believe that women have the voice. I'm an advocate for women, so I just feel like they have the voice that sometimes us men don't have. So power to y'all, women, all the women out here. And the second thing, I believe racism stems from home. There's no other way of looking at it. It comes from home, from the adolescence, from a young child all the way up. But at a certain age, it's up to you to decide, how do you want to see people? How do you want to perceive people? I grew up in a very cultured household. Didn't look at people's skin. I looked at how they treated me, and that's how I went. Never was told not to hang around white people or Hispanics or nothing like that. So again, it stems from home. So I believe when we practice the in-house, we won't have the messiness of racism. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matthew Mendelson. There was a question about where racism stems from and what we can do with it. And in my own opinion, I really think that racism and all this stuff that's going on right now, it stems from sin and the sinful nature of people. And there's only one way to deal with sin, and that's to follow the word of the ultimate power over sin, which is God. Love your neighbor as yourself and follow the biblical practices. That is all I have to say.
Thank you, Matt.
Hey everybody, my name's Holden Jackson. I'm a senior. This is the first time I've been to an event like this, and I gotta say it was really eye-opening. The main thing I want to talk about is how you're talking about racism on an individual level. And the FMU campus really is unique in that it's not one person's space. And I think this gives us an opportunity to really tackle this construct of racism. And the biggest way we can do that is just having a genuine interest in where you're from, everyone in this room is from, learn about what we go through on an individual basis, and break out of this toxic cycle of just putting everyone in the same little box simply because of what they look like. And that's become way too easy to do. So I think it just comes down to remembering that we should treat each other as family and not just label people simply because of what they look like.
Thank you. Is there any more comments from the audience? Okay, seeing that there are none. We are truly grateful for the kindness of the university's administration and Dr. Fred Carter for his continued support of these culturally rich experiences that help us engage and communicate with others to find common ground. It's been an honor serving as your moderator for this evening, and I can proudly say that I am impressed with the work our students have accomplished in ensuring that FMU embraces diversity and inclusion. At this time, we will have closing remarks from Mr. Ty Robinson, President of the Student Government Association. Please show him some love as he comes up to the stage, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I'd just like to say thank you to each and every one of you that are here this afternoon. We put a lot of hard work into planning this program. Of course, the audience isn't as large as we had liked to see, but looking at the positive, I'm very happy with you all coming out tonight. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. You guys did an amazing job. Thank you to Dr. McCants for assisting me in planning this program and also for serving as the moderator for this evening. Just a quick announcement. I was given this, there's a virtual collaboration via Zoom. It is called The Black Marxism, The Making of the Black Radical Tradition by Cedric Robinson. It's being held with our exchange university, De Montfort. It's being held in November. And our contact person for that is Miss Melissa Dungan, who is the administrative assistant for the honors department. If you'd like more information on that, I have the email address here. You can see me after it, and I'd be happy to give this to you. But other than that, thank you all for coming out tonight, and it was such a pleasure, so thank you again.